Hi, this is your host. In our latest episode, we talked about the discovery of an extraordinary dinosaur track site. In Texas, that includes the oldest known footprints of sauropods. Now, because of your response to that episode, we're back at Ghost Ranch with Dr. Sterling Nesbitt to learn more about another remarkable track site, one that he and his team discovered in 2017. This site tells us not only about dinosaurs, but also about the environment they lived in and what life was like for these ancient creatures. So let's follow these tracks back in time. This research was made possible by the rich fossil record of Ghost Ranch, New Mexico. Over millions of years, the rocks here have turned to stone, preserving countless fossils from dinosaurs to the insects that lived alongside them. The area has been studied since the 1930s, when renowned paleontologist George Washington Whipple unearthed some of the world's earliest dinosaurs here. And today, scientists are still finding new things to learn. One of the most famous sites is the Ghost Ranch dinosaur bed, where dozens of dinosaur bones were found just a few feet below the surface in the 1980s. But the focus of our story today isn't the fossils themselves, it's the tracks. Ghost Ranch is home to many track sites, including one at a place called the Turkey Pen, which is so rich in tracks it's been dubbed the Dinosaur Canyon. This site preserves tracks from the latest Triassic period around 200 million years ago. The Triassic lasted from about 252 to 201 million years ago. And according to recent studies, the end of the Triassic was one of the largest mass extinctions in Earth's history. Though the asteroid impact at the end of the Cretaceous period that wiped out the dinosaurs was far more devastating. The Ghost Ranch tracks come from a time just 30 million years before the extinction event, when the western part of North America was covered in shallow inland seas. But even though there were lots of water bodies in this part of the world, there weren't very many marine fossils at the Turkey Pen site. Instead, researchers found mostly tracks from terrestrial animals, including some of the first dinosaur tracks ever found in New Mexico. These include the tracks of a young sauropod named Omatsaurus. Sauropods were the longest-necked dinosaurs. The name comes from the Greek word sauros, meaning lizard, and the Greek word for stomach. The word pot refers to their pot bellies, hence sauropod. There are four main groups of dinosaurs: ornithischians, sauropods, theropods, and sauropods. Ornithischians were largely plant-eating dinosaurs that walked on all fours. Theropods included both meat-eaters and plant-eaters that typically walked on two legs. But sauropods were unique because they walked on four legs and had very long necks. Today, sauropods are represented by genera like Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus. However, Omatsaurus is much more primitive than these famous dinosaurs. It was about the size of a raccoon and preferred to live in forested environments. Even though it was a sauropod, it didn't look much like the giant sauropod we know today. Instead, it resembled a small ankylosaurus. Sauropods would go on to be the largest land animals that ever lived. But their ancestors were quite small. In fact, early sauropods probably looked something like the modern-day raccoon-sized Omatsaurus. At the Ghost Ranch site, researchers found hundreds of tracks from adult and juvenile Omatsaurus. The tracks show that these animals traveled in groups and sometimes left their tracks on the same log. Scientists think this behavior may have been an adaptation to fight off predators. Or maybe these tracks happened when a bunch of dinosaurs decided to hang out together. It seems like the social lives of these dinosaurs are preserved in these tracks. But as it turns out, their tracks tell us even more. That's because while studying these tracks, Dr. Nesbitt noticed that they often crossed a stream channel. There were over 400 tracks on only 1/5 of a square mile of land. And most of those tracks ended abruptly at the edge of the stream. And that gave him an idea. Maybe these tracks could reveal something about the environment of Ghost Ranch 200 million years ago. To investigate, he and his team carefully examined each track and categorized them based on what type of dinosaur made them. Then they studied how these tracks intersected with the stream channel. They wanted to see if the dinosaurs seemed to avoid the running water. And to their surprise, they found that the older dinosaurs seemed to favor the stream channel. The dinosaurs avoided it, and the younger dinosaurs seemed to prefer it. Specifically, about 60% of the Omphallosaurus tracks stayed away from the stream. But for other dinosaurs, like the phytosaurs, nearly 80% of their tracks were found in the stream. Phytosaurs were large carnivores that lived in the latest Triassic. Their name literally means fish lizards since they had elongated bodies like fish, powerful jaws and teeth that were designed for catching prey. And they had tails with flattened ends like paddles, which might have helped them steer themselves in the water. Because they had adaptations for life in the water, you might assume they spent most of their time there. But this track data suggests otherwise. The phytosaurs were spending a lot of time on land, possibly hunting on the floodplain. But why did the phytosaurs hunt away from the stream? A likely explanation is that the floodplain provided more food, making it a perfect hunting ground. The stream was full of fast-moving water, which doesn't usually support a lot of life. On the other hand, a floodplain is an area of low-lying ground next to a river that periodically floods. This type of environment tends to be rich in vegetation, which supports insect life. Insects support amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. So it's no wonder why the phytosaurs chose to hunt there. And to confirm this hypothesis, Dr. Nesbitt and his team counted the number of tracks with identifiable footprints. They then paired each footprint count with a location along the stream, some distance from the stream. And sure enough, they found the highest density of phytosaur tracks on the floodplain. The other dinosaurs showed similar patterns. The ornithischians stayed away from the stream while the smaller, more primitive theropods were found closer to it. Since there weren't many marine fossils at the site, the researchers realized that they were looking at a wealth of ecological data in their tracks. The dinosaurs were telling them how the ecosystem worked, and this kind of insight is rare. Usually we can only learn about ecosystems through fossils of plants and animals. But here the tracks were preserving information about how the animals used the landscape. Dr. Nesbitt explained that the stream acted as a barrier for some animals and a highway for others. Different animals needed different amounts of resources. Some could survive without venturing too far from the water, while others needed to venture far beyond the stream to find what they needed to stay alive. And because of the mass extinction at the end of the Triassic, this data is one of the last snapshots we have of life during that period. These animals died out 200 million years ago, and the oldest dinosaur we find after that is about 145 million years old. So it's hard to know what happened to the survivors of the mass extinction and how they adapted to their environments. However, the fact that there are so many tracks from early sauropods could mean that they were among the first to recover after the extinction. This could be because they were already well suited to living in dry environments. With their small size and preference for forested areas, they may have thrived as the climate changed and more forests grew. It's amazing to think that these tracks were made by dinosaurs that no longer exist. They provide an intimate glimpse into their daily lives and habits, behaviors that would otherwise be unknown. And now, thanks to this study, we have a better understanding of the ecosystem these dinosaurs lived in, as well as the role they played in it. What's more, this research shows that ghostwriting in general is an understudied resource. Most paleontologists focus on finding fossils, but there are many places around the world where tracks are much more abundant and easier to find. And if we take the time to carefully examine them, they can teach us just as much about the dinosaurs that made them as the fossils do. So the next time you're at a museum and you see a display of dinosaur footprints, take a moment to appreciate the incredible story they have to tell. Thank you for coming along on this journey through time. Thank you to our pandemonium of patrons for supporting this channel and all of our educational programming. If you would like to become a patron, you can visit our support page